Hey guys, welcome back to the Boneyard. Today we're covering Fear Street Part 1, 1994, the first film in a trilogy event on Netflix. Now, before we get started, if you could give us a like and subscribe, that'd be great, as we're brand new to YouTube and it helps us out a ton. If you are a horror movie fanatic, this is the place for you. On its surface, Fear Street appears to be just another slasher, with many nods to previous horror films. But as the movie progresses, we realize there is a much larger story at play, the three films being deeply connected. So, let's take a look at the story details, as well as the origins of the town's curse cast by the legendary witch, Sarah Fear. Our story begins at B. Dalton's bookstore in the very 90s Shadyside Mall, as Heather checks out her last customer for the day. It's closing time. Fellow mall worker Ryan pulls a quick prank and scares Heather before agreeing to give her a ride home after work. As the two separate to close their stores, Ryan hears something whisper his name, and we see a fly crawl up his neck. As Heather continues her closing duties, she's attacked by a killer wearing a skeleton costume and mask that's an obvious ode to Ghostface from the Scream movies. She fights back valiantly and retreats to Ryan's store, calling the police. But Skull Mask is on her heels, and she is forced to escape again, pulling a fast one on the killer before he eventually catches up, tackling her to the ground and attacking her. During the attack, she pulls the mask down, and we see that it's Ryan, except it's abundantly clear that something is very off. His face looks pale and sickly, with dead eyes. The attack is interrupted when Ryan is shot by the sheriff, but the damage is done and Heather dies. As the intro credits roll, we see that Shadyside has been plagued by crime for decades, as its neighboring town Sunnyside has been free of violent crime forever. I wonder if that's going to be relevant later. This intro is absolutely packed with clues to the overarching story, as well as more details on the abundance of serial killers that have terrorized Shadyside, but we'll get into more detail on that later. We pick up with our main character Dina writing a post-breakup FU letter to her ex Sam before getting ready for school. Dina interrupts her brother Josh, who is chatting online with the very mysterious Queen of Air and Darkness about the killings that occurred at the mall the previous night. The two agree that the killings must be attributed to the witch, Sarah Fear, once again having possessed another innocent Shadysider and forcing them to kill. Now, a quick aside, Josh is by far my favorite character, and as we see here, he knows a lot about the town's history. He informs Dina about the killings at the mall, and he even has a full conspiracy board dedicated to all the different serial killers that have plagued the town of Shadyside. Dina tells him to step out of his fantasy land, and he tells her to stop obsessing about her ex, Sam. Burn, you tell her, Josh. The pair head to school as we see the students almost excited about the killings. As it's such a normal part of their lives at this point, they're desensitized. During a mid-class rendezvous, Dina meets her best friends, Kate and Simon. Simon reciting the town's legend about the witch. She reaches from beyond the grave to make good men her wicked slaves. She'll take your blood, she'll take your head, she'll follow you until you're dead. The three talk about the killings, and Dina asks Kate to give Sam a box of mementos from their relationship at the game that night. Kate refuses and tells her she'll have to do it herself. Kate and Simon retrieve a box of drugs from a ventilation shaft, and Dina protests, asking them, "Didn't you stop dealing when Simon's brother OD'd?" But they inform her, Simon's brother wasn't a real OD because they were able to bring him back. Well, I can't argue with that. That's solid logic. In Sunnyvale at the pre-game candlelight vigil for the victims of the Skull Mask killer, we hear Sunnyvale's mayor speaking about the tragedy as Dina looks longingly at her ex, Sam. Dina leaves to find sanctity behind the stadium, but Sam approaches and the two fight about their breakup. There's obviously a lot of strong feelings and leftover emotions about the relationship, but it seems like the main reason for the breakup was Sam's move from Shadyville to Sunnyvale, Dina feeling left behind, and Sam's reluctance to tell the people about the relationship while the two are together. Although, I have to kind of feel for Sam on the latter point, as it seems like she has real feelings for Dina but wasn't ready to come out yet. As the two argue, things get ugly between the Shadysiders and the Sunnyvalers at the vigil. A fight breaks out between the students and tensions are running high. On the way back from the game, Sam's new boyfriend Peter, along with Sam and another football player, pursue the bus wearing skull masks, honking, and hurling bottles. Dina and Kate intend to retaliate by dumping a massive container of sports drink on the car, but Dina is hit with a seemingly random nosebleed, causing her to drop the entire container. It hits the car, sending it swerving off the road and into the trees. At the crash site, Sam stumbles out of the car, also affected by a nosebleed, and has some kind of psychic flash while crawling through some strange reddish moss. Dina, Kate, and Simon check on Sam, her spitting blood all over Simon's t-shirt. The sheriff interviews the group at the crash site, but they all clam up, saying it was just an accident. But Peter threatens Dina, saying, "You're all dead." The next night, Dina tries to call and check on Sam, but is rebuffed by Sam's mother telling her to stop trying to contact Sam, causing Dina to angrily snap a drumstick in half. The doorbell rings. Dina answers, but no one is there. Across the street, partially obscured by a tree, Dina can see someone standing there in a skull mask costume watching her. Too soon, man. Way too soon. She immediately assumes it's Peter, because he was wearing a skull mask and said he was gonna kill her. Her and Josh then see Skull Mask in their backyard with a knife. But when she goes outside to confront him, he's gone. She calls Kate, who lives across the yard, to complain. Simon is sorting laundry when Kate notices he's still wearing the shirt with Sam's blood all over it and tells him that's disgusting. He removes it as Kate takes the call from Dina. Kate and Simon then find Skull Mask in their house, sniffing at the shirt Simon just removed before escaping back into the night. Dina, Kate, Simon, and Josh decide to go to the hospital to confront Sam about Peter stalking them. But Sam covers for Peter, telling Dina he's been at the hospital with her all night as he enters the room. The two continue arguing but are rudely interrupted by the real Skull Mask impaling Peter from behind with his knife. Sam and Dina evade the killer as he rampages through the hospital, killing multiple nurses. Dina saves Sam as the killer attacks them, jumping on his back and ripping his mask off. The two are shocked to see that the killer is Ryan, dead Ryan, with the bullet hole in his head and everything. The two then escape in an ambulance that Kate, Josh, and Simon stole. The group goes into the police station, with only Sam and Dina going in to try to explain to the sheriff what's going on. The rest of the group keeping watch over the stolen ambulance, with the exception of Simon, who walks away to take a leak. Of course, the sheriff doesn't believe that the killer he personally ventilated is back, showing the two a picture of the deceased killer. But he appears shaken as the call comes in reporting the massacre at the hospital. The sheriff leaves, and Dina steals the deputy's revolver. They return to the ambulance to leave, but Simon hasn't returned yet. After he's relieved himself, Simon is entranced by some haunting singing coming from a girl sat against a streetlight. He goes to check on the girl as she looks up, revealing a wicked smile and some deep gashes on her face. She slashes Simon with a straight razor and tries to murder him, but he's saved when Dina empties the deputy's revolver into the crazed girl. But it seems she's much more than that, as Sam watches the newly bullet-ridden girl get back up as she resumes her ghostly song. The group regroups back at Dina and Josh's house to try to figure out what the hell is going on. As Simon is recounting what happened with the girl, Josh reveals details faster than Simon can, informing the group it must have been Ruby Lane, a killer that sang while killing her boyfriend, friends, and then herself in 1965. Josh then explains his shady side conspiracy beliefs, and the larger plot of the trilogy starts to become clear. Josh describes all the different shady side killers he's been investigating, including Ruby Lane, the singing killer in 1965, Ryan Torres, the Skull Mask killer who just massacred at the mall, and the psycho from the Nightwing Camp Massacre in 1978, who looks very much inspired by Jason Voorhees. This proves to be too much for Sam as she leaves to the sink to spit up some more blood. Dina makes sure she's okay, and the two continue their discussion about their relationship, coming to terms and seeming to make peace with each other. Josh reveals who he believes is the culprit behind the grand conspiracy, Sarah Fear turning Shadysiders into killers. Sarah was hanged for witchcraft in 1666, and Josh believes she has been possessing people as a part of a curse ever since. Simon recites more of the poem we heard earlier, which seems to unveil more secrets and possibly plot points for the next two movies. Before the witch's final breath, she found a way to cheat her death. By cutting off her cursed hand, she kept her grip upon our land. As Kate ponders why the witch is actively pursuing them specifically, Sam finally explains that she saw the witch in her vision after the car crash. The group returns to the crash site in the woods, hoping to shed light on their situation. They discover it is actually the witch's burial site, and they assume the witch's psycho killers are pursuing them because Sam disturbed her grave. As they try to put the bones back into the ground, they are attacked by the Nightwing killer from 1978. They narrowly escape and realize that Sam bled on the bones after the accident and that the killers are pursuing them because they all have at least some of Sam's blood on them, which leads them into hatching a clever new plan. They retreat to the school where they get rid of any items of clothing that might be contaminated. They then mix some of Sam's blood with water and make multiple trails leading to the bathroom. After trapping all three killers in the bathroom, they light a volatile mix of chemicals on fire, burning the psychos and causing them to explode. No, seriously, they blow up. It's pretty great. As the group enters the bathroom to extinguish the fire, they notice the goopy remains of the killers, starting to reform and come back to life. They retreat to a classroom and barricade the door, but are starting to realize the futility of their actions. Feeling like there's nothing they can do to stop the killers, Kate insists they should offer up Sam, as she's the one they want. Sam agrees to sacrifice herself, but we can see the gears starting to turn in Josh's brain, as he's once again formulating a plan. He realizes there was a survivor of the Nightwing Camp massacre in 1978 who also had a vision of the witch. As the Nightwing killer himself is hacking away at the barricaded door, Sam reads that the survivor, C. Berman, initially died before being resuscitated, causing the curse to lift. As Simon recites another important part of the poem, "She'll follow you until you're dead," the group comes to a mortifying conclusion. They must kill and revive Sam in order to stop the curse. They break into the grocery store pharmacy, and OD expert Simon lays out exactly how many drugs Sam will need to take to die, and they plan to inject her with epinephrine to bring her back. As Dina helps Sam die, Simon, Kate, and Josh wipe Sam's blood on them and split up in the store as bait in an attempt to keep the killers busy until the curse is lifted. As Sam chokes down handfuls of pills, Skullmask attacks, but is intercepted by Kate using an improvised flamethrower to get his attention. This doesn't go too well for her, as he smushes her face in cake, stabs her, and pushes her head through the bread slicer. Yuck. Simon is about to be killed by Ruby Lane, but this time he's prepared and knifes her first, just slowing her down, of course. The last dose of pills is spilt all over the place in the fray, and Sam and Dina are forced to get creative, Dina electing to drown Sam in the lobster tank instead. Josh and Simon stumble upon the horror show that used to be Kate's head, and as their hearts sink, Nightwing sinks his axe into Simon's head. No, you made me like these people and now you're killing them. Damn it. Just as Skullmask is hunting down Josh, the Nightwing killer moves on to Dina and Sam, as we see Ruby has once again entered the game. As the Nightwing killer swings his axe and Skullmask drops his knife to kill Josh, Sam dies and the killers vanish. Josh grabs the EpiPens and Dina proceeds to jam like 8 of them into Sam. She regains consciousness, and that's gonna be one hell of a hangover. Flashing forward, the 3 survivors are being interviewed separately by the sheriff about the events that night, and somehow Simon and Kate are taking the fall for all the killings that night, even though they were killed also. That night, as Sam and Dina hang out and rekindle their romance, Josh is filling in the Queen of Air and Darkness on the events that transpired. The phone rings, Dina picks up, and the caller is C. Berman, informing her the curse is not over, and that the witch will never stop, as we see flashes of the witch in a cave somewhere cursing Sam. Dina turns around and sees Sam. She looks down and sees Sam has stabbed her with that snap drumstick. Ouch. She survives, however, and ties Sam up, showing Josh and promising to fix Sam. So that's it for Fear Street Part 1. Now, I really enjoyed this movie, and I can't wait for the next 2 that drop in the coming weeks, which I will be covering here, so you better come back. Be sure to comment down below and let us know what you thought about Fear Street Part 1, 1994. Like and subscribe, as we're brand new to YouTube and it helps us out a ton. And remember, if you're a horror movie fanatic, this is the place for you. Thanks for joining us in the Boneyard. We'll see you next time.